Well, hello, everybody. How are y'all today? Sending you love from New Zealand. Another cool winter's day here. I thought I'd take a break from making these videos about my new book. There's a lot more coming, don't worry. And do something for a student. I get a lot of questions. This will be good karma, I think. I get a lot of questions from students all around the world who are doing reports on me, right? Usually they fall in two categories, either photography or it's about like travel or being a travel influencer. That's what this one is about, even though I don't like that word influencer, which I'll get to. This is from a gentleman who is who's getting his luxury hospitality master's degree at the University of West London. Sounds quite sophisticated, doesn't it? His name is McKenna Ehrman-Trout. I think that's how I say your last name, McKenna. I hope I didn't butcher it. He writes, in addition to loving your photography and creative post, I was fascinated by your partnership with the Ritz Carlton. And then about this award I got or whatever. And then what I want to do is, since I get a lot of questions around this, is I'll answer his, and then future students can just take this and cut it up. And you can, put in your own questions and pretend like I'm answering the questions for you if you want to. It'd be kind of fun. Anyway, he's doing his dissertation on me. I mean, I can't imagine that, but so let me get to his questions here. Where are his questions? Okay. Question 1. Do you think luxury travel influencers are essential in today's luxury travel market? Why or why not? Sorry, I don't really know the West London accent. I do think they're essential, but with some real caveats. Like, I know I get approached quite a bit because I've got a lot of followers, like 6 to 7 million followers. Most of those are on Pinterest. By the way, I'm the most followed male on Pinterest. But one reason they like that is because a lot of travel decisions for couples or families are actually made by women. And, Pinterest is quite female dominated. I just happen to be in touch with my feminine side, so it's a natural pairing. The problem with a lot of travel influencers, especially luxury travel influencers, is it perpetuates materialism and ego, which I think are not good, right? They don't really get you to the place you need to be. They take you into like a bit of a lower vibration. And I know this very well because my previous book was about this and about how flawed and corrupt the travel influencer industry is. I have lots of stories. I might share them later on through here. But, there's kind of two kinds of luxury travel influencers. Like I think the biggest thing that I did, I've done a few things, is I did this thing with the Ritz Carlton called 80 Stays Around the World. I kind of came up with this fun campaign where I'd visit 80 of their properties around the world, and we did like bus tours throughout Europe. We hit 10 different cities there, and I do photo walks in each location. We did 13 cities across the US, and we did all over Asia, just all around the world. And I would host photo walks almost everywhere. And then we would end up back at the Ritz Carlton where I would do a presentation and that sort of thing. And it worked out really well because, we would always have people from the team there with us. I initially got into it because of my amazing friends, Allison and Nick, who got to be good friends. I didn't know them ahead of time. And they were just so wonderful. And I always thought like the Ritz Carlton was like this really super posh place with all these, I didn't really ever feel like I fit in, sort of imposter syndrome, or not that so much as like, it was just like for the elites and like old country club guys and just real kind of like boring white rich people who don't know how to have a good time or whatever. But that's totally wrong. When you meet these people, they are the sweetest, nicest people in the world. And so when I get all my people around them and they come in, they're like, wow, the Ritz Carlton is like, it's like a really sweet place. And it's like everyone just gets up there and takes their happy pills. They're really just sweet, amazing people. And so it's nice for people to be immersed in that situation. So as I was going around doing this 80 stays tour, I think it went over 3 or 4 years. It was a big old project. They would occasionally bring out some of these other travel influencers to join me. And I met some of these people and I was like, who are these people? Like, there's no substance there. You know, not that you need to be this hyper intelligent polymath type person, but like, their photos were okay, but they seem to have like hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. And I was like, how is this possible? And then I looked into it more and I realized that they were buying their following and buying comments and likes. It's really easy to do. And that's what I did in that book. I actually built a fake account and got it just tons of followers with comments and all that kind of stuff to show how easy it is. And I exposed a lot of these fakers. And I was like, man, these people are just basically crooks, you know? And they trick well-meaning luxury places into having them come there. And to double down on the debauchery, they create this egotistic, larger-than-life persona that they're having these fabulous times. You know, they're drinking champagne in a bubble bath. They take photos of themselves or all this stuff, but it's all fake. And it's like really sad in a way. And then there are actually some real followers that follow them, and then they just kind of make everyone else feel kind of bad, right? Because like, oh, I'll never be able to afford that, or I can't do that. And it makes it seem like this kind of materialism is important, which of course it isn't. You know, if you have money and you want to go have a luxury vacation, go for it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm fine sleeping, you know, under a bridge, in a bush, in a shack. I'll sleep anywhere. Given the choice, I will stay in a nice place and have amazing food. But, you know, I really don't care. I'm really cruisy. And so the way that I share stories is just in a very real, raw way. And I think they appreciate that. So that's why I say, yes, it's important to have luxury influencers as long as you tell the story in the right way so that you're not, you know, pause. Okay, sorry, I went to go check the recording. I was like, did I hit record? Am I just like talking into a turned off webcam? I've done that before. Anyway, I was recording. Okay, next question. I forgot, I lost my train of thought on that, but you get the point. I'll probably twist around on this stuff again. Question 2. How do you keep your own unique image and voice while catering to what the company wants you to portray? Well, I only work with clients that let me do my own thing, right? If they have like a big list of demands or things, I'm not into it. If it happens to be something that I'm interested in, sure, I'll take photos of it and I'll talk about it. And I'll make Instagram stories about it and videos and all that stuff. Like I made a really fun series of videos when I took my family on an around the world trip. My wife and my 3 kids, and I pretty much make videos in every city, and it was really fun. Sometimes we'd be in the Ritz Carlton and their restaurants goofing around, and then we would like go get on a train in India, and we lived on a train for like a week, and that was great. And plus it's great to have all these videos of the kids on having little family adventures. The Ritz Carlton was great because they never said like, I have to take photos of their hotels. Even though their hotels are often extremely beautiful. They wanted me just to take photos of the city or anything that I found interesting to make it a destination. And sometimes I would take photos of the hotels because they've got some pretty sweet areas sometimes. And I like architecture photography. I like all kinds of photography. I think the requirement was they wanted me to take like, give them 10 photos of each city or each location, and they can use them however they want to, which is fine. You know, they can make prints, they can use them for advertising or whatever. Me, being a people pleaser, I tend to over deliver, and I usually give them like 30 or 40 photos per city. So that worked out really well. So this reminds me of another influencer that I got hooked up with in, where was it? Shanghai. And this this woman, um, of course, she bought most of her followers, and she's this Chinese travel influencer. And high end Chinese people are some of the most, not all, but a lot of them, they are some of the most materialistic people ever, right? They're just consumed with like wearing brands and having nice things and making sure everyone knows that they're wealthy or whatever. It's just like, it's rotten, right? And this is one of these travel influencers, luxury influencers, that perpetuates that idea, perpetuates that fiction. So it's almost a bit of a mind virus. And so, she was going around and doing her thing. And then like she's always upselling other stuff. Like she had this face roller. Have you seen these things? There's like a rose quartz face roller. You like rub it on your face and it like keeps your skin looking young or whatever. It's total snake oil. And so like I'm there like shooting my videos, taking photos, and she's making these stupid Instagram stories where she's like rolling her face with this rose quartz thing. And I'm like, all right, you're already like one of the dumbest people I've ever met, monosyllabic at best. But like, how vapid is her audience? And I'm thinking, is this who they're trying to impress? And it just reminds you of this whole wild egoic construct that people get stuck in. So I think, if you're hitting these luxury places and you have an authentic voice, an authentic style of your photos, I think I have an interesting, different kind of style with my photos and I think quite an authentic voice, then that resonates with the right people at the right time. Just don't fall into the trappings of what these other people are doing, because it's a disservice really to the audience and the entire world, and I think ultimately to the brand. Okay, next up. How do luxury organizations, i.e. hotels, travel companies, event operators, encourage you to portray the company's values and mission statements while promoting their product? If they have like certain messages they want out, I usually won't do it, because I'm not like some puppet. But the brands I work with typically don't do that at all. I did this isn't exactly luxury travel, but there's this high-end whiskey company in Scotland called Brora, and I went there. It was great. It was my first time in Scotland. Actually, that's part of what instigated my book, because while I was in Scotland, just to go off topic a little bit here, I was in my hotel room, and I didn't have any whiskey, by the way, and I just said these 24 magical words, and I collapsed on the bed face first, and my soul left my body. I went to the spirit world for a while. So this was the beginning of that adventure, and that's what the book is about, like my trip to the other side and coming back and figuring out the nature of reality and all this stuff. But anyway, so my initial reason for going over there wasn't to leave the earth. It was to go do some client work for this company, Brora. So they had taken one of my photos and a cask of whiskey, and they put it on Sotheby's for an auction. And my photo and that cask of whiskey ended up going for like over $1 million, which is crazy. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to go check this thing out. And I think I was shooting with them for 2 or 3 days. And again, they didn't have anything required that they wanted me to shoot at all. I told them that I would give them, 10 photos from the area, maybe some from the distillery as well, and they could do with them what they wished. I ended up over-delivering as usual. I gave them like 20 or 30. And I just went around and toured the highlands around there, the estuaries, and it's just such a beautiful area. And then, I submitted my favorite photos, and they always end up choosing one that is not my favorite, but that's okay. It's okay. It's still one I submitted. So I do know that a lot of companies do have requirements, and you have to be on message all the time. And I notice a lot of PR and marketing teams can be a little overactive, Every now and then I've had to work with some art directors that are a little, not really my style. I remember I was this isn't really a luxury hotel, but it's kind of a travel thing. I was in China. Um, they brought me there to, I think this was my fourth year in a row. They bring a few like good or famous photographers or whatever over to China for like a week to take photos and that sort of thing. And now, the Chinese government, they're pretty. I kind of had a shot list, but it's also okay because they were driving me around to places that I wouldn't have gotten in anyway. Like I got to go to the Summer Palace when nobody was in there and stuff like that, so that was fine. And I had this. There was this art director, right? He's a Chinese guy. He's wearing a beret, so you knew he's an art director. And he would come knock on my room door every night, and ask for my memory cards, like my raw photos. I was like, no, I will not give you my raw photos. He's like, no, we have to have them. I was like, no. And I would just close the door. He kept coming. He just didn't know what to do. I only give people my finished photos after my style is on it, and then I give them to them. I always over-deliver. And a lot of times these art directors or marketing departments or PR people can be really overbearing, and they have their own idea of what they want to do, which is fine. Sometimes they're really stupid ideas, right? Especially if they are not creative types, if they're more like corporate types. There are some people in marketing and PR that are creative, right? But sometimes they're just corporate types that are trying to do something in particular. Anyway, I have a lot of stories like that. What do you think is the most effective form of content creation? Is it stories, reels, pictures, blogs, vlogs, etc.? I think the two best things are photos and blog entries because they have long tails, right? A good photo can be reused for decades, right, for that brand. And also a good photo that's nice and wide, it can also be cut up and they can use it in different orientations, they can use it for different purposes or whatever. So that's like an evergreen thing. Same with a blog entry that has your story and some photos in it, or story and videos, like if you have it on YouTube or whatever. That has a long tail because that goes into the Google search history, and if someone types in whatever, Ritz Carlton, Puerto Rico Reserve or whatever, which is one of their nicer places, which I haven't been to yet, Ritz Carlton. Then, of course, Ritz Carlton is going to have the first few things on Google, but then your blog entry might make the front page also. So that has a nice long tail. But Instagram stories and reels and stuff like that, I make those, but they really only last for 24 hours. So that really doesn't do the brand any good. They're fun, and it helps the audience to get to know you, and you can develop your voice and your personality, which is important, that feeds into the photos and the blog. So it's really important, but it doesn't have a long tail. Let's see. How do you measure the effectiveness of a project? How do your partners, hotels, etc., measure effectiveness? Well, that's super difficult. And I know that PR companies and the marketing team, they're always trying to measure shit. But it's so hard to measure, right? My background is computer science and math. Like, I understand statistics and how to measure things, and like I get numbers and all that stuff, but there's so many coefficients in that formula, it's very difficult to measure the effectiveness of a campaign. I mean, sometimes for big ones, you can. Like, I just saw this one thing the other day. They got The Rock, I think they paid him, the U.S. Army paid him $11 million to do this whole recruiting campaign. And their analysis is that it was a failure. Like, they had like 58 people like unenlist or something like that. So I think maybe with a giant thing like that, you can kind of measure effectiveness. But if it's just like one travel influencer doing one thing, it's really hard to measure. One thing that I do at my events when we do these photo walks is everyone goes out, we all take photos. At one venue, we might only have like 30 people show up. At another one, like London, we might have 400 or 500 people show up. It really varies. I think DC, we had 300 or 400 people. But anyway, I have a funny DC story I'm going to throw in the middle of this. That's not related at all, but it's a good story. we would have people share all their photos online on Instagram and Facebook and hashtag them. And then their PR team was able to look at all these hashtags and they could kind of see how many people are sharing. And so that's some kind of measurement. How does that translate into people actually booking a room at the Ritz Carlton? Who knows? That could be months or years, but it might just implant the idea in their head like, oh, when I remember Trey did this thing when he went to like Aruba and he stayed at that place and it looked really sweet. So maybe when they go down there, they're like, let's stay at that place. It might be years later. So it's so difficult to measure effectiveness, and I don't think that they should try to, because it's a bit of a fool's errand. All right, here's this DC story. So before the photo walk, I arrive early. I think our bus tour, we were going too hard out. We went like New York, Philadelphia, and then maybe DC was the third one. It was like almost 3 or 4 days in a row. And I get there like usually an hour or two early to meet and greet, kiss babies, take selfies, that sort of thing. Because I love meeting people. It's always great. The nicest, sweetest people come out. It's kind of a self-selecting group because I think I'm a very open-hearted, loving, kind person, and that tends to bring out the exact same kind of people. And photographers are often very introverted people. We have quite a solitary, monastic life. Because it's a hobby. Unlike golf, like if you're a golfer, you always go out and play golf, and there's always other golfers with you. You hang out in the bar afterwards with other golfers, but not photographers. So this is a chance for all these fun, introverted people to get together and actually have a chat. So there's usually this throng of people around me. Okay. By the way, I don't take myself seriously, if you can tell. I have so much gratitude and love for everybody that comes out to these events. And so I'm going around, I'm meeting people, but it's not organized. And I'm like trying Trey, do not meet the same person twice. It's happened a few times, but there's hundreds of people, you mess up, and I always apologize. I know people don't mind, they get it. But so there's this blob of people around me, and they're kind of moving in and out, and I'm just meeting people. Anyway, through this blob, this tall guy in this suit just comes cutting through the crowd. It kind of parts like the Red Sea. I'm like, uh-oh, like what's going on? And then he kind of steps in front of me and he shakes my hand like really hard, almost like military style. He's kind of holding me in place. I'm like, oh God, what have I done? I have this always, I feel like I might be guilty of something. I'm like, oh no. And he goes, Mr. Ratcliff. I was like, yeah. It's like, hello. He goes, I want you to know that I am the director of communications for the Pentagon. I was like, oh shit, what have I done? And he's still shaking my hand, like holding me in place. He's got these piercing blue eyes that are just like bullets into my soul. I'm like, okay. And he goes, and I want you to know that me and the Secretary of Defense are huge fans. We follow your blog, we've done your tutorials, and if you ever need the help of the U.S. military, we've got your back. I was like, no way. And he is the greatest guy. And then we laughed, and he's even come out here in New Zealand, and we've had drinks just outside. Really sweet guy. Anyway, and that did help me later when I got incarcerated in China, in Beijing, for flying my drone over the Forbidden City. That's another story. Okay. How much does the product company contribute in content creation ideas? They often have pretty lame ideas, like I mentioned earlier. And they will set up shots for me to take, but it's up to me if I want to really take them or submit them. And the Ritz Carlton has done some amazing, I'll tell you a funny one that they did that was actually lame. And then, but a great one. So I don't remember where I was. It was Macau or someplace. And like what they'll do is they'll take like the bathtub in the room, and they'll send a little team up there to like decorate it for kids, right? Before your kids get in, like, or before you come over, like they get the kids' names and they'll go like use some kind of water soluble colors or something and like draw inside the tub and make little cartoons and make them feel welcome and say like, Johnny likes to go to the beach and or whatever. And I don't know, just stuff. And then so they were telling me about this, like, we want you to go take a picture of this bathtub. I was like, what? I'll take a picture of bathtub. They set it up. The artist has been up there all day. They've been working on this masterpiece. I was like, oh, all right. So I went up there into this room, went in the bathroom, and I wish I could find that photo. Oh man, that would be great. It was the lamest drawing. It literally looked like a 5-year-old did it. Like the letters were all over the place, and it did look like it was the lamest, saddest thing. I thought like, man, if I put my kid in that bathtub, he'd just be like depressed. I was like, oh, whose idea was this? Anyway, but that was like at the local hotel, and then I took the picture and I shared it like with the global team, and I said, guy, and we all just had a big laugh about it. A great idea that they had, this was Nick's idea, is that I was collecting all of these photos from around the world from this 80 Stays tour, and we decided to make this big coffee table book called 80 Stays Around the World. And we were going to put it like in all the rooms, in all the hotels. They were about to launch the Ritz Carlton yacht situation, which I made the video for, by the way. They contacted me early on and said, hey, we're going to be launching this luxury yacht, these 3 yachts, and we want you to make a video that runs in the room. And so I just combined a lot of my aerial drone stuff and made sort of this aspirational video, because we didn't have any footage of the actual yacht yet because it wasn't done. And it ran in the room. I think it got like 700 million plays or something. So that was kind of cool. Anyway, so we actually designed this whole book, and it took forever to design it. Building a book is difficult, especially like a fine art book like that. And then right before we were going to printing, that's when COVID hit. And then my 2 people at Ritz Carlton left. Allison and Nick left. So I lost my 2 main contacts. I was like, no. And then the book just kind of got forgotten. I was like, oh man. So that was actually a great idea that never came to fruition. Although, like Lazarus, maybe that book can come back from the dead because it's basically done. Who knows? These teams change a lot. The new team is great and wonderful as well, but it just wasn't their baby, so they just kind of threw it out. Okay, do they require you to post certain amount of things and then give you full creative freedom? Do they sway you to produce content? I think I already covered that one. Do you consider yourself a storyteller? Is your work a form of storytelling? Yes, I do consider myself a storyteller, but it's a skill that I've worked on over time. And the biggest tip I got was at the EG conference in Monterey, which is kind of like a TED conference, but it's more based on entertainment. It's called the Entertainment Gathering. And like people like Matt Groening and all these great creatives go there. And I've spoken there twice, maybe 3 times. Anyway, it's always opened by this raconteur named Stephen Tobolowsky, who you probably know as Ned, the insurance salesman from Groundhog Day. And he's been in lots of different things. He's great in Silicon Valley and so many things. Wonderful guy. And so he always, you have these 18-minute talks, right? Just like TED, right? So they're tight. And he opens every show and he tells a story. Like he was telling this one story about Iceland and falling off a horse or something. And well, actually, I do know the whole story because I remember it. And it's just incredible. And the whole audience is just watching him, and he's walking across the stage and telling this amazing story. And I'm up there looking at him like, God, this guy is amazing. How does he do it? And then so you have breaks, and you're all out there like having shrimp cocktail or whatever, and he's right across from me. And it so happened that we went to the same college that he had mentioned. He went to SMU in Dallas, and so did I. So I mentioned that. I said, hey, that's a great story about Iceland. I said, I'm speaking later. Actually, I have a picture of one of those horses that you fell off of that I'll be showing. He's like, oh, wow. And then we just had a little pleasant conversation. I was like, how are you such a good storyteller? And then he like locked eyes with me and stopped. He goes, do you want to know? I was like, yes. And he goes, do you mind missing the next sessions? I said, no, not at all. He goes, come with me. You grab your food and come with me. So we got our food. We went to this other room. And then he proceeded to spend like an hour with me teaching me storytelling. I always thought it was something that other people did. I didn't realize it's a skill you can work on. So he told me about Stanislavski's 3 acts, right? Act 1 is where you bring people into it, right? You get people kind of excited. He said people spend way too long on Act 1 of stories. Basically, you make it something they can feel or touch or really visualize. And like an example is, I remember back in grade school, I sat behind this girl named Becky, and she had this long black ponytail. And I always thought about taking the end of the ponytail and dipping it in my inkwell. So people are in. They can picture that. You say he was kind of into Becky, but didn't really know. And then Act 2 is where you get into like more emotional stuff. And he goes, Becky and I lived kind of close together, and I timed it so that we were like walking home about the same time down the same street, and we were walking beside each other and kind of talking. And then my hand was kind of brushing in her hand, and I wanted to hold it, but I was shy. But then I was bold, and I just went for it, and I grabbed her hand, and she didn't let go. So then people are like, oh. And then Act 2 proceeds like there's some drama, love triangle, there's plot points. The character, the protagonist has some growth, through trials and tribulation. And then in Act 3 is the ending, and you always tie it back to Act 1. You say like, we ended up getting married. We had 3 beautiful kids, a white picket fence and stuff. And he goes, we've never been so in love. We fall more in love every year. And I think back, and I'm so glad I never dipped her hair in that inkwell. And then people are like, oh, they start to cry and stuff, right? So, and that's what Pixar does. Pixar has these rules of storytelling that I invite you to Google, because they're very good at storytelling, as you know. And so you can kind of like practice your story before you tell it, practice in the shower or whatever, just put it into 3 acts. In fact, if you watch my TED Talk, you'll see that I used this trick, and it works really well. Because really, we're wired from our, Neolithic mind, if you're into anthropology and stuff, we're wired to just remember stories, because that's what we did around campfires and stuff like that. We tell stories. So it doesn't matter how good a picture is, unless there's a cool story around it, people aren't going to remember it. So it's something anyone can learn. Okay, final question here. Do you get any monetary rewards for successful campaigns? Does the partner hotel keep track or share the effects? None of that has happened to me. I do get, compensated. I get to stay for free and travel and food and drink, and then they have, I get cash on top of that. That just makes sense, because it's my time and my effort and my art and my work and my effort. So that makes sense. I tend to charge quite a bit, because I don't do a lot of client work, really. Maybe, once or twice a year. I kind of like doing my own thing. But I'm kind of a unique case, I think, because I make most of my money by selling art, like big fine art, to collectors. That's kind of really what I do. But I also know that there's a whole class of people that make all their money by being a travel influencer. I'm not saying that's a bad gig to have, but I think about it a little bit like my wedding photographer friends, that they're always just looking for new clients, right? And if they're not out there chasing down new clients, then they're not, setting up their schedule for the future to make money. And then they don't really get to do the other photography that they might really want to do. Like maybe they really want to do travel photography, flowers or whatever, but they spend so many cycles out looking for more clients. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that I don't do that. I rarely reach out to clients unless it's something I really want to do. I kind of wait for them to come to me, which is nice, and I have a lot of gratitude for that. Okay, well, I hope I answered your questions thoroughly, McKenna. Good luck to you there in West London. Hope you have a successful dissertation. If it ends up being good, feel free to send it to me. I will publish it on the site so people can read all your handiwork. Okay, love you guys, and see you next time. Ciao bella.